Take a slow, deep breath. Honestly, just pause for a second and look around at your life. We live in an era of absolutely unprecedented freedom. I mean, think about it. Endless choices, ultimate convenience, constant optimization right at our fingertips. You literally have more permission to just be yourself than any generation in all of human history. Yet, why are you so utterly, perpetually exhausted? Why are modern breakdowns so silent? Well, you are being chronically poisoned by good things. I recently came across a profoundly deep philosophical diagnosis of our time that completely reframed this whole experience for me. So in this explainer, we're going to explore why so many of us feel like we are suffocating, not from hardship, but from an excess of positivity. So let's really sit with this question. Why do we collapse in environments of total peace and permission? Usually when we talk about burnout or anxiety, society loves to frame it as a personal failing. You know the drill. You just need a better morning routine, right? You just need to manage your time better. But what if your exhaustion isn't actually a failure of your personal psychology at all? What if the very architecture of our modern freedom is the exact thing that is breaking us down from the inside out? To answer that, we are using this absolutely incredible book as the primary lens for our explainer today. It's called The Burnout Society by the philosopher Byung-Chul Han. And let me tell you, Han offers a deeply psychological, completely uncompromising look at the architecture of modern fatigue. He essentially argues that we are looking at our current mental health crisis through the entirely wrong historical lens. We're using outdated maps for a brand new territory. Han points out something fascinating. He says that every age has its signature afflictions. If you look back, the 19th century was the bacterial age. Then, the 20th century, which was totally defined by the Cold War and rigid, clear borders, was the immunological age. That was an era all about warding off the foreign, the alien, the virus. But the 21st century, we have fundamentally shifted. We are now living in what he calls the neuronal age. Our signature afflictions are no longer infections from the outside. They are neuronal illnesses. We're talking about depression, ADHD, and burnout syndrome. The core difference between the past and our present really comes down to the nature of violence itself. In the old immunological society, violence was what Han calls negative. It came from the outside. It was a hostile other, like an enemy army, a literal virus, or a strict prohibition that you had to actively defend yourself against. But today, that hostile other is basically disappearing. We live in this massively globalized world of sheer excess. So violence today is positive. It comes from the inside. We aren't being attacked by a foreign enemy anymore. Instead, we are absorbing a totalizing endless stream of the same. Let's slowly unpack this because Han uses a crucial medical metaphor here that is just brilliant. Neurological infarction. In medicine, an infarction happens when tissue dies because its blood supply is cut off, usually because of a massive blockage or a buildup. Han argues that modern burnout is exactly that, but for your mind. It's a psychic infarction. You see, you aren't being attacked by an alien virus that your immune system can just fight off. Instead, your soul is suffocating. It is overheating and collapsing from an absolute excess of positivity, endless simulation, and just way too much information. Your immune system simply doesn't know how to fight off too much of a good thing. So this brings us to a concept that is absolutely central to understanding our modern condition, the violence of positivity. Now, I know it sounds like an oxymoron, right? We are so deeply conditioned to think of violence as something entirely negative, a weapon, a physical deprivation, a strict, forceful no. But Han argues that violence in the 21st century is perfectly silent because it doesn't look anything like a prohibition. It looks exactly like permission. It doesn't deprive you of things. It saturates you with them. It doesn't exclude you. It totally exhausts you. Just consider the invisible poisons we casually consume in our daily lives. Overproduction, overachievement, overcommunication. This systemic too-muchness operates entirely internally. Think about it. There is no dictator forcing you to check your email at midnight. There is no prison guard standing over you, forcing you to constantly optimize your personal brand on social media. This positive violence is so insidious because it operates in an environment of total peace and consensus. Let's think about how society actually controls us now compared to the past. The philosopher Michel Foucault famously described the old disciplinary society, a world of hospitals, madhouses, prisons, and rigid factory lines. That world was entirely driven by the negativity of prohibition. The operative words were should and may not. But today, we've knocked down those walls and replaced them with glass-walled fitness studios, massive office towers, and endless shopping malls. We now live in what Han calls the achievement society, and it's driven entirely by motivation, deregulation, and the boundless, incredibly positive modal verb, can. Listen closely to this observation from Han because it really hits hard. The complaint of the depressive individual, nothing is possible, can only occur in a society that thinks nothing is impossible. Let's just let that tragic irony sink in for a moment. Our pervasive cultural mantra of yes, we can inevitably creates a reality of exhausted failure. When society constantly tells you that there are absolutely no limits, that you can be anything and optimize everything, well, the moment you inevitably falter, the only person left to blame is yourself. And this brings us to what I personally found to be the darkest, most profound paradox of Han's entire philosophy, the executioner within. You see, we celebrated the disappearance of the strict disciplinary boss. We honestly thought that the disappearance of external domination automatically meant freedom. But it didn't. Actually, scratch that. It's worse than that. It made freedom and constraint completely coincide. We have literally liberated ourselves straight into a brand new kind of prison. Han writes, and this is a direct quote, "The depressive human being is an animal laborance that exploits itself. It is predator and prey at once. You are the master and you are the slave. You literally carry your own labor camp right inside your head. You are simultaneously the prisoner doing the hard labor and the guard cracking the whip. The modern soul has quite literally become its own executioner." This is the vital core difference between allo-exploitation and auto-exploitation. When an external master exploits you, which is allo-exploitation, there's a hard limit. You can see your oppressor. You can rebel against them. But auto-exploitation, exploiting yourself, that is infinitely more dangerous and wildly more efficient. Why? Because the victim willingly, enthusiastically participates. You exploit yourself under the incredibly deceptive, glittering guise of self-realization, of hustling, of living your best life, of total freedom. The philosopher Giorgio Agamben talks about this ancient concept called homo sacer. It refers to a person who is reduced to just bare life, someone who is utterly expendable. Han takes this ancient concept and beautifully, tragically applies it to us today. The modern worker strips away their own soul, their own deep narrative complexity, entirely in the name of pure, optimized productivity. We treat our own lives as bare biological functions that just need to be maximized. We become essentially undead. As Han describes it, we are too alive to die and too dead to live. And look at how this systemic exhaustion impacts our actual minds. In the corporate world, we treat multitasking as this ultimate badge of honor, right? But Han reveals a really surprising truth here. Multitasking is actually an animalistic regression. Think about it. In the wild, an animal has to divide its attention constantly. It has to eat, watch for predators, and guard its young all at the exact same time. Multitasking isn't advanced, it is just a state of wild, flat vigilance, and it completely destroys the environment required for deep contemplation, that profound, immersive focus, which is the actual birthplace of human culture, philosophy, and art. So how do we survive this? Where do we go from here? Thankfully, we can pivot from this incredibly stark diagnosis of our exhaustion to a very real, very hopeful philosophical remedy. To survive, we have to learn how to reclaim the pause. We absolutely must rediscover the profound, transformative power of simply not doing. This requires us to develop what Han brilliantly calls negative potency. In our current society, we only ever value positive potency, the power to do something, to act, to react immediately, to consume constantly. But negative potency is the vital, life-saving power and sovereign ability not to do something. It is the wildly countercultural power to say no. Because if you only have the positive power to perceive, your senses are at the absolute mercy of every rushing, intrusive notification that crosses your screen. True freedom isn't endless action. It's the power to pause, to delay, and to set a firm boundary. I absolutely love this poetic metaphor from the philosopher Walter Benjamin. He says, deep boredom is a dream bird that hatches the egg of experience. In our frantic, totally panicked rush to avoid boredom at all costs, we pull out our phones at the very slightest hint of empty time. But Benjamin argues that true creativity, lasting cultural achievement, and actual meaningful experience require profound idleness. If sleep is the absolute peak of physical relaxation, deep boredom is the essential peak of mental relaxation. And embracing that pause changes the very nature of our fatigue. The writer, Peter Handke, beautifully distinguishes between two different types of tiredness. What we feel today, constantly, is mostly eye tiredness. It is the harsh burnout of self-exploitation. It divides us, locking us into these highly private hells of inadequacy. But there is another kind entirely, we-tiredness. This is a fundamental, restful tiredness. It's a tiredness that finally loosens the rigid, anxious grip of the ego, restores our deep trust in the world, and heals our communal connections. To find that healing tiredness, we must consciously return to the vita contemplativa, the contemplative life. Now, to be clear, this isn't about passive resignation or giving up. Not at all. It's an intensely active, deliberate resistance against the rushing, screaming crowd. It means getting your eyes used to calm, to real patience. It means allowing yourself to look at a landscape or a complex problem, or even just another person, slowly and deeply, without immediately trying to consume them, optimize them, or turn them into a shiny new project. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you sitting with this thought. Just take a look at your endless to-do lists today. Look at the immense pressure you put on yourself to be the absolute best, most fully optimized version of yourself. And just ask yourself this lingering, haunting question. Are you exploiting yourself in the name of freedom?